500 years ago, he washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck. And upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die.
The Phantom!
The ghost who walks.
The Phantom!
Enemies beware, the Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom. He finds you.
G'day everyone, for those who came in late, you're listening to X-Band, the Phantom podcast, and my name is Dan Fraser, and I'm here with Jermaine and Steve. How are you boys?
Very well. Very good, mate.
Okay.
Very good.
As you can hear, they're remotely with us. Live in the room though, however, I'm joined by Billy Zane. How are you, Billy?
Very well, mate. How you going?
Very good, and very excited to be talking to you. Nice Australian accent there.
Was it really? It crept in unintentionally, I assure you. So nice we could pull this together. Thanks for coming on in using the technology available to us. The boys are chiming in on a joint call. This was initiated by yours truly. We had the pleasure of meeting at the Supanova in Brisbane. I figured, we might as well get this going. We've been talking about doing it for a while. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we could all sit down
Absolutely.
and have a chat.
No, we appreciate it.
Oh, my great
Yeah.
pleasure.
Absolutely.
So obviously, as you say, we've been talking about it for a while, and I guess what we're keen, from our perspective, we're by the fans for the fans, and we want to know, how are you a fan? How did you become a Phantom fan?
The Phantom is inseparable from Australia for me, because I really discovered him here. When I was filming Dead Calm and then Sniper, I kept collecting the comics, reading the comics, and I was in Double Bay, I think, on the rocks, and felt like I was in the Bengali. I was reading, and between swims, and I was just marveling at the virtues that everyone seems to embrace. A naturalist hero with no superpowers who's super well adjusted and disarms and doesn't kill. I just really admired his white hat heroics and moral compass in a time when heroism was becoming ever more and more anti-heroism and seemingly dark and edgy. And I liked the fact that, the fiber of the character and what he upheld and how it was so heavily championed into the national character of this country in particular. And I think it really played a role in shaping the modern bloke, as it were.
Yeah.
So I had always admired that and wanted, like any boy, to be him, any man. And curiously, when the opportunity was, nearing, I found that I had a chance at this crazy dream.
Yeah.
And then it was more of a psychological will that was then followed by, brute force and lifting of heavy objects.
And you had to do a lot of work to get it over the line, didn't you?
I did. But it was as much psychological work as it was physical.
Yeah, okay, cool. And you're still a fan today, I assume? Do you still read
entirely.
the comics?
I do. I pick them up here and I bring them back. And I'm a big fan. I read them to my daughters, who are fans.
Yeah, wow. Okay, and
Oh, wow.
We're collectors. Are you a collector? Do you pick up the statues and the prints and all of that sort of stuff as well?
No, I've allowed that to just find me. Collectors like to, I'm very grateful for those gifts that are bestowed. So I tend to not, you don't find the Phantom, he finds you, I'm told.
Absolutely. Jermaine, you had a question about a sequel or something?
Yeah, I was just asking, with the original movie, were we ever close in getting a sequel? Has there ever been talks about another Phantom movie that you're aware since the original in '96?
There have been talks, that I've been party to, and then talks that I have not been party to, and then versions that were spun and even, considered, and I mean, I can safely say it's something I am actively pursuing, but of course that requires a couple institutions and to fall in line and the stars to do the same, which was not much different than when the first pass, what seemed impossible and insurmountable, and even when the first version that I was, after I did a screen test and was cast, the movie was going to be produced by Michael Douglas and Steve Ruther and have Joe Dante direct it, with a version that took place in the 60s in Chicago, which is where I was from, which I really loved that draft. Yeah. And I loved the idea of working with Joe. And it fell apart, at the studio. It's like something's going to turn around. Planets didn't align. And I thought, oh boy, when that happens, it's hard for a project to come back. But this, unlike all others that preceded it, came back with a different script and a different producer and a different, that was what was so interesting about it. It persevered, and Robert Evans stepped in, and Jeffrey Boehm, was brought on to write the screenplay, who I love, for Last Crusade and Briscoe County and all of his great scripts. And some of the team changed, but the folks at Paramount said, keep training, don't stop. There was a gym on the lot that I used to live, not too far from, and would ride my bike onto this. And that was my routine for months. I just trained and waited and willed, and sure enough, it came back around again, which was really rare. Simon Windsor directing, Alan Ladd Jr. producing along with Robert, and we, it came back, and we pushed it forward. As far as the new version, as I said, there's I think it's ripe for it. I think we're at the right time frame. I think that movie came out at the right time as well. Some may say if the metric is measured around box office, it didn't, hit with a splash, yet was championed after the fact. And sometimes things take time, and something needs a bit of underdog status in a way. I'm glad that it was grouped with some of my favorite adventure films, which became a lost art and genre after that movie, to be honest, and it's something I would love to revive. We got plenty of action and lots of tech and superheroes fighting aliens, which seems like a fair fight, kind of boring if you ask me. As opposed to real men fighting piracy and tyranny. A little more practical and kind of exciting. It seems seemingly higher stakes than the crazily fantastical.
And we could be at a time when we move back towards those, you think? Everything's... Marvel's been huge, but it's, Endgame has happened, so maybe it's time to...
I just think we're going to see, even fighting style. I'd like to see just the cinematic extension of roundhouses and, benign saloon punch-ups as opposed to, quick-cut jiu-jitsu and very painful, MMA kind of stuff, you know what I mean? I just think there's something about, much like the Phantom, restraint, disarming with two long barrel 45s, then brutally, killing. It's John Wick is and it is certainly a genre for this age and a film for, I guess, the gamer, but I'm convinced, and having spoken to many, there's something in the DNA that pines for a more kind of benign, with less emotional baggage, less stuff to carry and process that borderlines the sociopathic. It just speaks to something a little higher in us, and I feel that through critical mass, I think we're at a place where, one, we need it within society. Two, I just think people know what they need and know what they want on an individual.
Do you think it would be because the '96 film was a very fun film, there was the fight scenes, but it was a fun film. Do you think if it was to be remade in 2019, 2020, it would need to be a grittier Phantom to land with the audiences, or could we still have that fun?
I just think remake is not the right term. No offense. I just think it's you pull a continuation, but enough time has passed whereby the demand for something as charming as that original film, I think would be received. Had we come out earlier, it might have undergone the pressures of the development process, which always tries to make last year's film, not next year's.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah.
It would have suffered a different fate. So I feel it's seemingly protected by its status as this mysterious outsider.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what appears to be a deficit is an asset.
Yeah, I agree, because as a comic strip, it's lasted for 85 years, nearly 85 years, and it's a timeless character and timeless theme. So that could stand up in movies as well, surely.
It absolutely can, you know, and still does. It seems immune to, you know, some of the, I guess, criticism that, you know, it is of another age. It is a certain dynamic of. I don't know. I think it. I feel that the demand will rise enough whereby we'll see a whether it's a sequel or a continuation. I don't necessarily know if it should be reinvention.
No, and I didn't mean to say remake. I think that's exactly right. I'd love to see yourself come back and you know, we've talked a few times on the podcast about you being the father phantom who passes the mantle on.
Exactly. Without necessarily having to die, but maybe just want to retire.
They do say that no phantom has ever met his grandfather, which is fairly poignant, I think.
Grandfather's one thing, father's another.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Well, there has been phantoms that have passed the mantle on to their sons without dying, so there is precedent.
Well, inevitably in good storytelling, I think the young man might get in a bit of a bind, and Dad may have to squeeze back into the purple outfit to pull his butt out of the fire, you know? It's like,
well, they say phantom is many men. It could be a good opportunity to extend on that myth.
There you go.
Oh, very good.
There's a lot to explore thematically, I feel, as my sense is the Phantom, you know, remember, he was created for a segment, a supplement in a woman's magazine, right? And this was in the middle of, you know, the Depression, as a seeming portrait of an ideal male archetype and some form of relief for a woman, and an anchor or a compass again for men to kind of hold on to, pre-Superman, pre-Batman, you know, all ahead of all of these, right, fantastical kind of characters. So that notion was significant, and likewise when that was transferred through the more popular delivery systems, men found, I think, a surrogate father.
Yep.
You know, the Phantom is the father to all men. And girls, and you know, and that is a really significant and important role in our society today more than ever, because I think a lot of the boys are lost. Considering, you know, we're 3 generations deep on first-person shooter games, and perhaps that long in terms of easy access to pornography. There's 2 major influences. You kind of, you know, without proper stewardship or a curation or advice or that, just simply the presence to guide you through, you know, much of the influences of the modern age, and a reminder of what works and what proves successful in all of life's currencies, then you're adrift and you bounce off and you might bottom out. And I think the Phantom carries a form of guidance, and you know,
he's a role model.
It's a wheelhouse to kind of always remember, you know, have access to, and So I feel that is something equally that there is a timely need for to revisit, and why I think it, you know, it's like cooking, man. It's like it's almost ready, you know.
Yeah.
It's just a little more simmering, and it'll taste great when it hits the table. Don't worry.
Yeah. Do you have a favourite story or something that you'd like to see a movie come back around and tell that story of a comic book that you particularly enjoy? A favourite story
From the Phantom?
Yeah.
You know, I'm a big fan. I like the human drama and the shortcomings of, you know, dastardly do an evil deed being corrected, always given the benefit of the doubt, and ultimately, karmically, maybe undermining, you know, the villain by choosing to not grab that hand extended off the cliff for safety, but trying to hurt it and maybe, you know, falling to their own demise, at their own hand, really. Those lessons were not arbitrary, and the minute you kind of include a little of the supernatural, which I didn't mind in our film, I would have preferred it to just honestly remain things of this world. However, it was nice to have a little bit of that Indiana Jones mysticism in there, and artifact engagement. But I would just like to see, you know, these rough on Roughnecks, you know. I just want to see little Barbary Coast, little John Wayne, you know, that stuff.
Well, there's certainly plenty of pirates around today.
Pirates,
different form, but they need taking out.
It's just charming. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And it's relative and relevant, more so than you go too escapist and you don't think it lands into your day or wheelhouse. If it's somehow vaguely familiar, countering, you know, bully behavior, something kids could do with that.
Yeah.
And people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Adults.
Are you a little surprised that a movie that you did 23 years ago is still resonating? Like every time I go down to see your signing line, there's people there. There seems to be 50% Phantom and 50% Titanic. It is my view. How have you seen it?
It's pretty consistent. I'd say more. I'd say I give it 70 Phantom.
Oh yeah.
It's thrilling that film really again resonates. I'm not surprised that in this community it's so significant.
Is it a big difference going to a US con versus an Australian con?
Yes and no. What's really neat are the die-hard comic fans and genre fans love what you love about the Phantom. It traveled. They really respond to it. Though they're the first in line to see every Marvel movie and are geek out on all the usual fare, they hold a very dear place for what we have just been discussing. And that's comforting. It's what I equally am humbled by and really grateful for is we've seen in the age, certainly of social media, the vociferous responses and visceral and emotional responses, mostly negatively, to casting choices and adaptations, certainly surrounding the Batman, franchise, among others. And I'd say fans have a greater attachment to the Phantom that I know, certainly here, than those other characters, and where there seems to be grounds for greater ownership and protection. There's been nothing but praise for how we executed and how maybe I portrayed. Yeah. And that is nothing warms me more than that.
You were so authentic. I mean, legend has it that you spent, and you mentioned it there, all the time in the gym to be the right shape yourself, and you were very Ray Moore live Phantom rather than this we joke about a condom stuffed with walnuts on the you're not the muscle suit and the Batman with his armor. You're a real, in that movie, you're a real man, just super fit, super strong, as you would need to be if you were thrust into that situation by birth, I suppose.
Well, he was like, he looked like a rugby player, and
Yeah,
that's, I was just going, he's just got to be, he's got to be strong, he's got to be hard, he's got to bleed, stuff hurts, and you get out of the way to not get more hurt, you know what I mean? So you use your head, but and
I think that adds to the realness of the character as well,
Yeah.
where we can all relate.
Heck yeah.
You don't have to be bitten by a spider to be able to be a hero or build a suit. We can just be fit and just be a super person, and we can be a hero.
Exactly. Super humane, not super.
Super humane,
Yeah.
And I agree wholeheartedy. And part of that came around, my father's one of his favorite actors was, in films, he loved Johnny Weissmuller. He loved Tarzan, and trained a lot when he was young. When that kind of, no one was. My dad was one of the first guys who was jogging in Chicago, like right before Rocky came out, and everyone started going for it before the gyms. They all thought he was like, a criminal. Like, what are you running from? Like, no one ran. You only ran if someone was after you. And he wore that, those gray sweats were the only. There were no track suits. Like, eventually, when Lee Majors hit the scene, or Bruce Lee, did you start seeing some of those like 70s nylon? Leisure wear tracksuits. But my dad looked like looked like Rocky and a mash. He'd be like the only dude running on the beach, and trained and played football and wrestled, and so this was as much of a love letter to him and his love of cinema, heroics, humor, and physical fitness, and so. The idea of a rubber suit on a naturalist hero who was as much Tarzan as he was, kind of a Batman of sorts. But it seemed illogical and uncomfortable filming in Thailand. I was like, no,
That's humid
thanks.
over there.
Rubber. But when you take the costume off at the end of the day, it springs into like the size of a Speedo. It's nothing. It's on a hanger. It's funny. It's like there's nothing there.
Yeah. So just to meeting fans again, you've done a lot of signing. I've talked to a lot of people who've had you sign lots of different things. I've seen a lot of pop vinyls. But what's some of the more memorable or unusual things that you've been asked to sign over the last, say, 2 weeks?
Well, certainly some original props that came out of the film. Blueprint of the cave, the Sang Brotherhood cave, that came off of the film set. Construction team, which was cool. And it was aged now. It looked like a pirate map. But it literally was a blueprint schematic. It looked great. The bridle and chest, I guess, gear, whatever that you would call that hero wore, someone had in a case, which was pretty cool. A couple skulls of Tuganda. And what else? Yeah, really, neat pieces that would show up.
Well, I think
collector cards
locally, because some of it was filmed on the Gold Coast, including that. So that's only an hour down the road from here, obviously.
Yeah.
So keen fans at the time were able to snap stuff up. We know a bloke who's got the submarine in his backyard.
I met him. He told me, and I signed something.
I didn't bring it up.
He's got the sub. And again, what I love about that movie is it touched upon, like, the fact that we row into the cave reminded me of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, right? And where all the kids were hiding out, and like that set, or reminded me of those Bond movies that always had that kind of cave-like setting, or The Spy Who Loved Me, right? Or the Raiders, where the submarines were held in within Malta or something like that, within the rock of the island, and then the volcano explosion at the end was like Mysterious Island, or all the movies that made me want to make movies were touched upon
Yeah.
in that film in so many ways.
Yeah.
Zorro a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, Taiwan Powers, of course.
Just action.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So it was, I just would like to see more adventure films. Period. Certainly more Phantom films, but I'm really excited about trying to initiate a few of those.
So is there any way that, we fans, people who are listening to this, is there any way we can help? Can we light a fire under Paramount or King Features, or who needs a ride?
I mean, listen, this is a art by committee. Every movie is, and it takes an army. We've seen the effects of an outcry and a request. Some doesn't have to be a demand. It just can simply be, the proofs in the numbers. And there's so many people I talk to, independently want that to occur. I've had this conversation countless times at these tables.
Because while the box office may not have been, what everyone would have wanted, it's just been on and on. Like it's the DVD sales, the TV appearances,
building critical mass. It's on TV.
Yeah.
It's on TV all the time.
Yeah.
And the way of measuring that is a bit tricky. So I think you need to create a central hub and start a petition. I don't know what to tell you. And why not? It should come out of the ChronicleChamber. Start an international, petition for our sequel. Mention you'd like me in it.
Yeah.
That'd be nice. You got all that effort. Be like, lovely.
Yeah.
And let's, get a unified front going. Push on, because there's a sense of ownership, and then what you're doing is you're building a built-in audience who are invested at it takes everyone to roll that boulder, and I would love to know that we hit the tipping point and that everyone was party to it.
Absolutely.
Because we could all deserve that party.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right, I'm conscious that we're taking up a lot of your time. You've been super generous, and we appreciate it. Stephen and Jermaine, have you got a last question for Billy?
Or any? I've been talking the whole time. You guys chime in, please. Anything you want to know?
It's been great sitting here listening to, getting an insight to the film and how you feel meeting the fans, and can hear a real pleasure in your voice, being able to come out all the way to the other side of the world and meet these really, really passionate fans. And so I'm at the other side of the country, or south of you. Jermaine's to the west of you at the moment. Wishing them we could be up there and seeing you in person as well. But so we're a bit jealous of Dan, who's gotten to do it these last couple of days. But thank you once again for joining us and having a chat.
Well, thank you. We're looking at the idea of coming back, perhaps to Sydney and Perth, maybe even Melbourne, and doing a very dedicated event around the film, rather less broad, a little more narrow. We're talking to the organizers here, who've been fantastic.
Yeah.
And the idea of maybe doing specialty screenings and Q&A.
Yeah, well.
And really eventizing it a bit more.
Yep.
Maybe a pop-up gallery with some of the artists, and so something, I don't know. Stay tuned.
That sounds fantastic. Yeah.
For those who
that sounds brilliant.
come in early.
Well, there's Perth, Sydney, Melbourne. We'll all be out of
listing
there
their locals.
help cover it and promote it.
No, that would be fantastic.
And as we get closer to it, we'll certainly give you a heads up. So it'd be great to
please do.
help promote it and let people know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Do it in a heartbeat.
Really bring the diehard fan base out, and then find ways, to participate more so. I think people really like to. Dressing up is great.
Yep.
But how do we take it even farther? Yeah. Certainly tying it to some local charities, but it'd be nice to activate, to really mine that fiber and that metal that makes this character what it is, and then figure out how to galvanize it into some community action and really take advantage of that force and critical mass and make some impact here while we can.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think you would definitely get the fans on board. As you may not know, but there's been a purple haze over Brisbane Supanova this year that doesn't always happen. There's a lot more Phantom T-shirts, there's a lot more Phantom cosplayers than there ever is, and so your presence has brought them out. And I think if there was a dedicated tour or those events that you're talking about, the people would come out. There's no doubt. There's no doubt.
Yes, definitely.
I look forward to meeting you all.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much
worries.
again.
Thank you. Thanks, fellas. Thanks for.
Appreciate it, Billy. Appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate yours. Thanks for chiming in, and look forward to meeting you in the flesh soon.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes,
Absolutely.
brilliant.
Thanks to all the fans for listening in.
All right. Well, as we say at the end of all of our podcasts, happy phantoming. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Take care. Now.
All right. I'll talk to you soon, boys.
Happy phantoming, everyone.
Happy
Bye.
Insanity. Bye.
All right, thanks again to Billy. That was fantastic. We're recording this now a couple of days later, after we've been able to get over the thrill, I guess, of talking to Billy Zane, who is a genuine film star. I'm going to tell everybody the story of how I managed to get in a room with him sometime in a future podcast. It's a pretty exciting story for me, anyway, and hopefully entertaining for people to listen to. I didn't expect it was going to happen, and suddenly it did. So if you want to hear the story of how to get into a room with Billy Zane, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast. Anyway, a couple of days to reflect, guys. How good was it for us to actually talk to Billy Zane?
It was amazing. It was amazing. Very good. It was a few years to be able to get that opportunity with some sneaky little work behind the scenes, played by everyone. But Dan, you did a brilliant job in doing what you did. In talking to him, almost made up for the fact that, and I'm sure Stephen will be the same, that we were unable to be there. So it was a real privilege to be able to speak to it.
When my phone was going off with the phone call that you were doing there, Dan, I thought someone had pushed the phone button. The button by mistake. Why the heck a Chronicle Chamber or why are they calling me? What's going on here? It's during the day.
I did give you,
and then you've hit us with the news.
and behind the scenes, I gave you, was it 7 or 8 minutes warning? Like, guys, I don't know where you are or what you're doing, but we're about to talk to Billy Zane. And that was all the notice that we had.
I was at the Ballarat show with my family, and I got my boys, going around the show bag stands. You've got what? Who? What? Yeah. No, I'll be good. Yeah, I'll be right.
So it certainly wasn't as prepared and as organised as we usually are, but we didn't think it was going to happen, and it did. So anyway, we enjoyed it, and we'll tell the full story of that later.
You got to be ready for anything, really. If you told me, 23 years ago that I'd, get to talk to the bloke who's I'm just watching up on the screen there, bringing my hero to life, I would have told you were crazy. It was fantastic. So whether it was at the Ballarat show or wherever, give me left leg to talk to him on the phone, and you got to talk to him in person. So.
I'm still coming down from it, to be honest. So anyway, reflecting on the conversation, what was one thing that stood out to you? What was a key takeaway that you took away from the chat we had, Jerm?
I'm sure a lot of people probably already know this, but it reaffirmed that he was the perfect choice as the Phantom. Yeah. He talked about the passion and the drive he had for the character, and to also see the movie come to life. It was like, oh yeah, we're not doing the movie now. Keep working out and keep building those muscles, and we'll see what happens. And I dare to say, even at 50 odd, he's probably still remaining the best choice there is to actually probably play the Phantom.
Because he wants to.
Yeah, he wants to. Now, a lot of actors, when they're portraying characters, it's just a job for them. This was a way of life for Billy.
Yeah.
And that came across from the chat we had with him, and with all the other interviews and audio grabs that we have heard from him. He is the Phantom, basically. And he's got that passion and that hunger to do it. Where I don't know whether we're going to be, if it does happen and it's not Billy, I don't think we're going to have. It
would be interesting to see who they'd get through just an open casting call, rather than someone who's clearly such a fan as he is. What about you, Steve? What's your key takeaway from the chat?
Well, first off, have a bit more trust in the process. Hopefully, there's a few other actors out there who'd be able to fill in who'd be able to join Billy up there on screen in the Phantom family. But my key takeaway is the the want to come out and do like a Q&A tour with the movie.
Yeah.
And thinking about this, it'd be great if it happened. You always want something, quick,
immediately.
Just as bad as kids. As bad as kids, you want that immediate gratification. But saying in 2021, that gives a bit of time to happen, and 2021 is the 25th anniversary.
Yeah.
So to me, that kind of makes sense. And it'd be great if that could come to fruition. And I'm sure there's 3 fellas here at least who could host Q&A sessions or moderate Q&A sessions at their local cinema or one in their local
wink,
capital
nudge,
city.
nudge.
Look, there's 3 states covered.
Yeah, I would say
really
that
only Melbourne and Adelaide, the other ones that will actually be able to pull anything.
Yeah. Without spoiling the next podcast, I'd say any one of us could do a better job moderating a Phantom panel than the guy who did it at the Brisbane Supanova, the Phantom panel without Billy. But anyway, I digress. And obviously the tour would be part of trying to promote interest in the film and interest in the franchise, and hopefully having that continuation movie, sequel, continuation, call it what you will. Do not call it a remake.
No, he was adamant on that one, wasn't he?
Yeah. And so, no, I agree, and I absolutely agree. But part of I guess getting that momentum is as Billy said, getting the fans on board. And so to that end, we've taken his advice. We've started a petition to present to King Features to say, hey, we want a new Phantom movie. And the link to that is in the show notes. And we encourage everyone listening to this to go and hit that and do the very least you can do, which is sign your name to an online petition. What I would say is, it's really important for people to get involved, because one thing that I've probably defended Phantom fans a lot in the past, and Jermaine's been quite vocal about the fact that we need to be more active. And I'm starting to come on board because Phantom fans do just tend to sit back and let things happen. And I saw a very real example of that in the panel with Billy Zane. Again, it'll be in the next podcast, but spoilers, there's nowhere near as much Phantom content as we would have liked, even though something like 70% of the people in the audience by acclamation and applause, sort of indicated that they were fans, because no one was prepared to even put their hand up and ask him a Phantom question. So Chris Hill, tip of the hat to you for finally standing up and doing that. But it just really drove home to me that we actually need to stand up and have a voice. We actually need to be loud at some point and say, no, demand a Phantom film. So the very least you can do is go to the show notes, click that link, and go online and sign the petition. Share it around, share it with your friends. Take that link. We're going to publicise it. We will certainly publicise it in our social medias and on the website and that sort of stuff. But we really need Phantom fans to get on board and share that. And look, we don't know who's going to listen to this interview with Billy Zane. If you're listening to this and you're in any sort of a position to advance the cause because you know somebody who might be able to finance a film or get involved with sponsors, or I don't even know how films made, but you as a listener might know something about how to do it, please do something. Everybody needs to do something to try and make this happen. So,
and you got to remember, this isn't our idea. This is actually Billy Zane's idea as well.
Do it for Billy. No one refuses the Phantom.
Old jungle saying.
Old jungle saying.
And that was totally unscripted.
It actually was. Anyway, for those who have come in late and this is your first Expand the Phantom podcast and you're here because you've you've wanted to hear something from Billy Zane, thanks for coming on board. For those who don't know, we're the team from ChronicleChamber.com. We're a small team of fans who live and breathe the Phantom, and we're actually really proud to be able to bring you Phantom information from all over the world.
Yep. And if you're here for the first time because of Billy Zane, but you do like the Phantom and would like to delve into that world, we've got a couple of our favourite episode podcasts that may interest you.
Yep. So, for example, episode 126, which is the interview with Alex Saviuk, one of my favourite artists. So he's done Phantom and Spider-Man, and he's worked very closely with Stan Lee for decades.
And talked to us for 3 hours.
Yes. That
was a brilliant
he did go on for
podcast.
3 hours. It was fantastic.
PH.
Yeah. So if you want to get a bit of an insight to Alex and his work in comics, check out that podcast.
episode 125, which is an interview with Sal Veluto. He's the Phantom and the Black Panther artist. And for those who may be interested, he actually went to the premiere of the Black Panther movie because a lot of the stuff that's in that movie is work that he has co-created and stuff like that as well. So he's a fairly big name as well, which was a brilliant opportunity for us.
One of the biggest names in fandom history, though, has got to be Cy Barry, and we're absolutely chuffed that we've actually had Cy on the podcast 3 times. Twice were with standalone interviews where he talked to us for well over an hour. So if you want to go back into the back catalogue, episode 53 and episode 113, to hear from, I guess, to many people, the archetype of the Phantom artist. He illustrated the Phantom newspaper strip for over 30 years, and for many people is the Phantom artist. So I'd heartily recommend those 2 episodes in particular.
Definitely. And if you're a movie related fan, episode 7 would be very interesting because we actually talk with Australian fan Bradley Peach, who actually owns the submarine movie prop from the 1996 movie. And so he actually stands and is in his backyard of where Catherine Zeta-Jones, Christy Swanson, and the man Billy Zane actually stood and got the film made as well. A nice little side story: I've kissed my wife in that submarine as well.
As long as that's all you do.
And then also episode 64 is an interview with Gary Horn, who is a fairly well-known Australian collector, who actually owns the 2 items that Billy mentioned in the interview that you've just listened to as well.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's going to get a kick out of that when he hears that. So yeah, so we've been doing the X-Band podcast since 2014. What's that? About 5 years now.
Yep.
And we have nearly 150 episodes. This is probably episode 132, 133 now. But we do have a couple of A issues and B issues, just like the Through Phantom comic. For those of you who are familiar with the Phantom publication here in Australia, and just like Through, we have a new episode coming out reasonably fortnightly. Sometimes it's fortnightly, sometimes it's a little bit longer. Sometimes it seems a lot sooner. Seem to always be podcasting, and we discuss everything that we can related to the Phantom, from news, comic reviews from all around the world. And as we mentioned before, we get interviews with creators. Mostly podcasts have been audio, but in the last little while, we've also been going into video interviews as well, which has been a nice little path to take.
Yeah, absolutely. And a big thanks to our Patreon supporters for making those video interviews possible just recently. So, look, everything that you want to know about the Phantom, if you're online, you probably already, and a Phantom fan, you probably already know about ChronicleChamber.com. It is the world's leading Phantom website, we're pretty proud to say. You'll be able to go there, see everything we do. It's our one-stop shop for Phantoming. The website's actually been around since 2006. Joe Douglas started it back in the day, and it really is the online resource for all your Phantom needs, with links to every Phantom stuff on the web and all the latest news and information about our favourite character.
Definitely. And as you heard in the interview with Billy, our ethos is that we are for the fans, by the fans. And we have fun while doing it, and we hope that you, our listeners, do as well.
So if you're listening to us for the first time, you can subscribe to us via iTunes or Spotify and all the other Android apps.
Yes, and then don't forget that a lot of our Phantom content is also on the social media platforms. So if you're a social junkie, if Facebook is your poison, search ChronicleChamber.com. If you're a tweeter, search at Chronicle Tweets, or if you're an Insta, at Chronicle Chamber, or if you like to watch videos, and we do, like we said, a lot of our video podcasts and a lot of our other stuff, a lot of our reviews is also on YouTube, and that is simply searching at Chronicle Chamber.
Billy refers to it as the Gram, not Insta, and we're pretty chuffed that he's actually liked quite a few of our posts on Instagram, on the Gram. For those who are there.
Thanks, Billy.
Anyway, probably the way to make sure that we actually see comments and that sort of thing, because as much as we try and be across the socials, we're all busy people. But if you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at chroniclechamber@gmail.com. So look, if this is your first time listening to the podcast because you're here for Billy, or it's your 100th time listening because you have been on board since day dot, either way, we thank you very much for listening to us, and I hope you really enjoyed listening to Billy Zane and some of the other stuff we've done. So anyway, until next time, everybody, happy phantoming, and thanks for joining us.
Happy phantoming.
Happy phantoming.
The phantom's always there, but you won't find the phantom. He finds you.
Phantom.
Okay, all right, I'm recording this. So the situation is that I've just spoken to Billy Zane at the signing for the last time, because that was the last autograph I was getting, and just asked questions. He said, so when do you want to do this podcast? And I said, mate, whenever you are ready. And he said, well, I've got time at lunch if you want to get the other guys. And I'm like, well, they're in Victoria and Perth. And he said, well, can you get them on the phone? I said, I don't know if I can do that. I've now borrowed a voice recorder of Paul, which I hope is recording this, Paul Mason, who's happened to have a voice recorder in his bag. So we're in a conference call right now. I'm standing outside the door. Billy's just grabbing a bite to eat, and then going to come around and we're going to have a chat in the media room. So, very good, mate. You guys need to be, I guess, in a quiet place. I don't know how much. I'll hang up in a minute, I guess, and then call you back when he calls me in. He says he doesn't really like the podcast genre because it can meander and it can go for too long. He said, how long are your typical podcasts?
We can be as short as he wants it to be.
Yeah, I said that's right. I said our typical ones are about an hour, so it lied through my teeth. And I don't know. He just said he likes it short, sharp. He likes the pressure of commercials, all that sort of stuff. So anyway,
yeah, no, that's fine.
All right. So just be ready. When I call you back, hopefully I'll be with Billy.
Cool. So can you hear us all right?
Hey?
Can you hear us all right?
Not real well, but I'm out in the auditorium. I'm hoping in the quieter room. I've got the volume right up, and I'll put the recorder next to the phone.
Cool bananas.
We'll see how we go.
Alright, so did you try testing recording this?
I have tried recording with the recorder, and it's got fresh batteries in, so as best as I can hope with a piece of equipment I've never used before. We'll see how it goes.
Talk to you soon.
All right, so that's why I said just one question. Yeah, be ready to fire questions at him.
No problems. All right. We'll see how we go. I'm at church with kids around me, so I'm not sure how I'm going to go. But we'll see how we go.
How often do you get to talk to Billy Zane? Make it happen.
Yeah.
All right, talk to you soon, guys.
Talk to you soon.
See you.